What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast, CBS Sports Daily NFL Podcast. I'm Brinson. I'm your host. We are starting at exactly 11:45 for the second day in a row. To all the haters in the chat, what do you expect at this point? It is Friday, April 29th, and we're going to recap day 2 of the NFL Draft. If you're listening to the podcast in audio form, and we of course appreciate all listeners or viewers, however you take in the podcast, it's Saturday, April 30th. I can't believe I had to double check that. We will, if you're watching on YouTube, smash the like button, please hit the like button. We may give away, I think the Eagles did good stuff again. So maybe we'll give away pint glasses and $100 Paramount Plus gift cards. Hit the like button, and joining me to break down, it's a fine. I guess it was the expected day 2 of the draft. John Breech, Josh Edwards, Chris Trapasso. What's up, boys?
Expected day 2. For instance, we saw a producer almost pull someone off stage for the first time in draft history. I mean, we saw groundbreaking stuff happen today.
That was actually kind of cool. We got who it was. I was what I was doing when the Vikings thing happened. Oh, I know. I had to. It's this long story involving how my dinner got delivered to someone else's house and I had to go pick it up. But yada yada yada. I was watching on my phone, and the Vikings. Was he drunk? What was happening there?
Just milking his time on stage.
I like it. Josh, what's up, buddy?
Not too much. We are one day away from wrapping this up, so it's been a wild couple days. Excited to see what comes on day 3.
Are you excited?
Edwards, I have to say that it's in my contract.
Do you and Trapasso like hibernate after the draft's over? How does that work?
Oh, 100%.
I'm gonna need to.
Yeah.
I'm gonna need
that's
to.
what I thought.
Yeah.
Like 6 months, 3 months.
Should I tell these guys next week's programming plan, or should I hold off on that?
Oh boy, probably not.
Turns out, actually, Josh and Chris are taking over the podcast. I'll see you later. Traps, what's up, man? How we doing? How we feeling?
Good. I just got all the grades done. I thought it was like a more wild day 2 than what we've seen. Maybe just because of the quarterbacks, but like some of the picks within like the top 20 of round 2 were kind of like, whoa, we didn't expect that guy to go that high. So we had kind of chalk at the beginning of the first round, then it got crazy. I thought almost this whole second day of the draft, there was just constantly either surprises early or guys falling that we didn't expect.
I mean, I think that this draft is a good summation of the NFL in the sense that it's not a very good draft. A bunch of quarterbacks that everyone thought weren't very good fell down the draft board. And yet I heard Roger Goodell at the start of day 2 say, and 30 million people watch it. 30 million people watched the draft of day 1 in the worst draft ever. And I'm sure tens of millions of people watched the entirety of day 2 for betting reasons, for their team's picks reasons, for whatever reasons. The NFL is insanely popular. And even when the NFL cranks out something that isn't necessarily aesthetically appealing, people still love it. And it was still entertaining. It's just, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I've just been doing this too long and I'm just tired. Like, I don't know. This day 2 just lacked the panache of a previous day 2.
I think it's the first thing you said, Brinson. Is that the first sign it's time to retire?
No, I mean, come on. Like, who's the first guy drafted in the second round that really gets you? Like, if you're not like a draft, like, who's the first guy drafted in the second round that gets the average fans like, oh?
I would say that the Packers trading up for a receiver, second pick in the second round, was pretty exciting.
Traps gave the C+, so yeah, let's keep. I like Christian Watson there.
Well, I mean, you can argue with the pick. I'm just saying the general action. The Packers have not drafted a receiver that high since 2002, and there'd been all the hubbub after they didn't take a receiver in round 1. And it's almost like Aaron Rodgers texts the general manager overnight and said, "Look, man, you better get a receiver, and it better be in the top 35. So you need to do something right now." And then,
yeah, I mean, well, let's start there. I mean, I think Aaron Rodgers is I think we're supposed to start with losers, but whatever.
Just
I don't know.
not
It's
listening
a
to
good
the
news, bad
producer.
thing. Do you want the good news first or the bad news first?
I'm just saying, who is the most recognizable big name in the second round? It's probably either Breece Hall or Kenneth Walker, right?
A Jabo, maybe.
Yeah, David
Or
Ojabo
maybe that's
would
just the
work.
draft guy in me saying that. I don't know.
No,
Because
Ojabo.
it felt like
Yeah,
he was.
Ojabo tore his ACL or tore his Achilles in the pre-draft process. Probably is a first rounder if that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
By the way, that's a good
probably why I
example
would say
of
that.
Achilles doesn't matter. Team will trade multiple picks up to go get you. I mean, excuse me, ACL doesn't matter. Teams will trade multiple picks up to go get you. Achilles, you are plummeting down the draft board. And that's the new reality, by the way. If you see Achilles injury, somebody's falling. ACL injury, shrug it off. Yes, that's right. As Tom in the chat points out, trading with the I thought the most interesting thing was the Vikings have traded now with the Lions and the Packers.
What are they doing?
So weird.
Why are you trying to make your division
Very
rivals
weird.
better?
Very bizarre. Okay. So let's get into winners and losers. We gotta start with losers, Breech. And you start because
Are you afraid I'm going to name everyone again
no, I was gonna call you
and end the conversation after 30 seconds?
My God, you're
I am going to
like 5
go.
and 32 picks.
I'm going to go with the Cleveland Browns. It's not necessarily that I dislike their picks, but I think there has been a total wrench thrown into this Baker Mayfield situation because now you have a very limited amount of trade partners going into this draft. Maybe the Panthers. Well, guess what? The Panthers are no longer a candidate. Carolina.
I'll handle the Panthers thing.
Okay. Well,
I'm pumped for that.
I'm mentioning the candidates.
Very
I'm not going
pumped.
to go into the Panthers thought process. I'm saying
But the Panthers drafting Matt Corral eliminates him.
right. So that's all I'm going to say about that. So, and then we do know based on multiple tweets throughout the night that the Panthers and Browns were chattering about a Baker trade. And it's almost like, and apparently the big sticking point was how much the Browns were going to pay of Baker Mayfield's $18 million salary. And they couldn't figure out what number should work. And apparently the Panthers just said, F it, we're taking Matt Corral. So now, if you're the Cleveland Browns, you still have Baker Mayfield on your roster. You have to pay him $18 million. He cannot be on your team. He cannot go to OTAs or training camp and be playing behind Deshaun Watson. So at some point in the next month or two, you are either going to have to cut him and eat $18 million or give him away to the Seattle Seahawks for free. And it literally feels like the Seahawks are the last remaining candidate. So just because the Browns have left themselves in this precarious Baker Mayfield situation, I don't know if they should have tried harder to do something maybe in March when Baker Mayfield's value is probably a little bit higher because now teams have their quarterbacks. They don't need them. And now you're stuck with them.
I want to ask Traps and Josh about the draft value of the guys that the Browns took. And they didn't have a pick until the third round because they traded for Deshaun Watson. And Deshaun Watson, on a pure football scale, makes your football team better. We know everything that goes into that. But I like to imagine the idea of the Browns looking around this room full of potential candidates for Baker Mayfield to go play for. And it's nothing but Pete Carroll in a top hat and a monocle. And he's just smacking his gum as loud as possible. He knows he's the only person left. He knows the Browns have no one else to trade with. And he's just like kind of cackling. He's like, yeah, I'll take him for a 5th round pick that you guys send me and you take half of his salary, or else you're just going to cut him and eat $19 million. So I don't know. You pick which one's better. Josh, as our resident Browns guy, when we factor in Deshaun to this draft, how do you think they did relative to just their picks, which started in the 3rd round? Martin Emerson, Alex Wright, David Bell, all 3 3rd-round picks.
Yeah, they did have a 2nd-round pick at the beginning of the night, but they traded down with the Houston Texans to pick up some additional draft capital. So,
which is kind of weird, by the way, after the whole.
Well, it kind of tells you a little bit about how they value this draft class, apparently.
I just meant trading with the team that sent you Deshaun Watson. It's just kind of like, let's do some more trades, guys.
I like the picks that they made. I mean, I was a little hopeful that Travis Jones was going to be available for that 2nd choice, but actually a division rival who I will be talking about as a winner actually plucked him out from underneath of the Browns right before their selection. So I like what they did. I mean, it doesn't blow me away. It doesn't disappoint me, but factoring in everything else, the Baker Mayfield situation obviously has to be considered a disappointing night for the Browns.
Traps. Yeah. I mean, also let's not forget that when you on like almost every year, there's a team that doesn't have a first round pick and sometimes doesn't have a first and a second. And they do the draft and you're like, yeah, their draft kind of sucks. And there's a bunch of teams who have multiple firsts. You're like, oh, I mean, they smashed the draft. Like, yeah, I mean, that's just, it's just sort of how it works. But Traps, when you look at these guys that the Browns got, how do you feel about the prospects that they added?
I like what they did. And you can see there, because I did the grades for the round 2 and round 3, B- for Martin Emerson, B+ for Alex Wright. Alex Wright's interesting in that he was an enigma during the pre-draft process because he was an underclassman, so he didn't do any Shrine Bowl, Senior Bowl, and he got injured, so he was not able to work out at the Combine or his pro day. He's 6'5", 271 pounds, and he looks not like Myles Garrett, but he looks ready to go in terms of his body, his frame, and I think I wrote it there in the grades. His high-end reps are like first-round caliber. He just doesn't have too many of them. He's inconsistent. And I really like David Bell. He ran pretty slow at the Combine and the Purdue Pro Day, but he forced over 20 missed tackles, which is a really, really high number. He's got that kind of Deebo Samuel-esque body, like 6 foot, 215-ish pounds, was really productive wide receiver for 3 seasons, even when Rondale Moore was there. They needed to add a receiver at some point. If they hadn't done that, I would have definitely labeled them as a loser just from the prospects. But to go corner was a little weird. And then edge and wide receiver, 2 of their bigger needs. I like the players that they got in the second day of the draft.
All right. Who wants? You know what? I'll go ahead and I'm fired up. I'll pile up on the Panthers. The Panthers are a loser here, and they shouldn't be. Well, they should be because they didn't have a second or third round pick. But you know what? You don't get called a loser by living in anonymity and not making any picks in the second or third round. Like if you traded them away, and the Panthers did that. They traded away a high second round pick for Sam Darnold and a high third round pick for CJ Henderson in this year's draft. They didn't have any picks. They didn't trade down from 6, and they drafted Ike Ekwonu on day 1. Applause. Nice job. I prefer to get picks and maybe get an offensive lineman, but you got a good left tackle who you could start from day 1, protect your quarterback. Your roster should be better. Do you have to live with the Sam Darnold mistake and maybe tack on Baker Mayfield or Jimmy Garoppolo and try to fix it with a little Scotch tape? Yes. Is that fun? No, nobody wins that way. But you know what you don't do? You don't do the same damn thing that got you in this position in the first place, which is to trade away next year's third round pick to move up like 137 to 94 and draft Matt Corral. Now, Matt Corral could be great. I hope he is. But the idea, and I'm getting pushback on, and I can't figure it out. I'm getting pushback on Twitter about this from Panthers fans who are like, it's a third round pick. Who cares? What are
They're
you
in denial.
Nuts? They gave up the 70th overall pick for CJ Henderson. 2 years ago or 3 years ago, they gave up the 100th overall pick to draft Will Grier in the third round. This is Will Grier 2.0 unless Matt Corral is awesome and can play right away. What the hell do you think you're doing? You might be giving away a top 75 pick in order to get a guy who probably won't beat out Sam Darnold, who has off-field concerns, has been reported by our own Prisco, who's talked about this on HQ. And now you're like, oh, who cares? LOL, third-round pick. This is what bad franchises do to stay bad. This is insanely stupid football, and it reeks of what happened is there's a big quarterback run where Ritter goes and Malik Willis goes, and David Tepper couldn't get a Baker Mayfield deal done, panicked, demanded that his front office give up next year's third round pick, move up, take freaking Matt Corral, and thinks that's going to solve the problem. It is terrible decision making. That was kind of a rant. Sorry.
I'm glad you got all that.
Can't wait until that's on Carolina radio later tomorrow morning.
I'm going to have to answer a phone call. I'm going to have to answer a phone call on Monday, aren't I?
Maybe.
I mean, but am I wrong? Am I wrong here?
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Like I didn't really like Matt Corral. He was one of my lower quarterbacks in this draft because I think he was my quarterback 5, right ahead of Sam Howell. But Will, you and I talked about it on a one-off video. It felt like, just pick Sam Howell or hope one of these 2 guys falls to you.
Or maybe Matt Corral falls to you at 137.
Yeah. And it's like, and I said it and then corrected myself, like this maybe felt like a David Tepper, stepping in saying, get a guy now, or Matt Rule saying, hey, I need someone to play now, but I don't think Matt Corral's really close to being ready to assume a starting role and help the Panthers win more games than Sam Darnold would have if they just didn't trade those picks and kept Darnold as a starter. So this is not a week one ready quarterback that's going to help them keep their jobs in Carolina. It's kind of a weird pick. And you're right. That third rounder in 2023 is going to come back to haunt them.
Samir in the chat is like, Josh looking off screen, wondering, why am I still here? I don't want to make this about Matt Corral personally, because I don't dislike Matt Corral as a quarterback prospect. I actually kind of like Matt Corral as a player, but I just don't understand how a professional football organization can be sitting there without a second or third round pick on the entire day two. And they've been lamenting it for months and months about how they don't have a second and third round pick and they're desperate for more picks. And then you trade next year's third. Like, you just created the same problem that you've been complaining about in order to get a guy who, probably isn't beating out Sam Darnold. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And it stinks of an owner who panicked and foisted a trade on his front office.
Brinson hates this. It's shocking. What would you have thought if they had taken a quarterback with their first round pick?
Oh, you don't want to hear that rant, buddy.
Okay, that's good. Because the thing is, I don't hate this pick as much as you do. I do think it was dumb for them to trade back up. And
if they took Matt Corral at 137, or even give up like 2/4 to move up in the fourth round, like tomorrow, I would give them a slow round of applause. But that third round pick, Breech, they haven't won more than 5 games under Matt Rule. It is way more likely that third round pick is in the top 75 of next year's draft, which is going to be a much better draft than this year's draft, than it is that the Panthers ride Matt Corral to the playoffs.
Right. And I absolutely agree with that. I think the only upside, as Brinson loves to say, playing devil's avocado, is that you have low risk pick here because you got Matt Corral in the third round and not the first or second round. It's not, if he ends up being a bust, it's not horrible, but hey, they're in Vegas and they're gambling here. If you hit a home run and Matt Corral's your franchise quarterback, you just found him in the third round, you only gave up a third round pick, then you look like a genius. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but just because of where you got him, it makes it a lower risk pick.
Look, don't get me wrong. I'm like walking into the future in my head thinking about Matt Corral. I was like, Matt Corral, another MVP for Matt Corral with the Carolina Panthers as he wins a third Super Bowl. And it's just the clip of this podcast being played over and over and over again as I get dunked on repeatedly. I don't know, Josh, like, what do you think about him as a prospect and the fit in the trade? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I can't decide what they're doing. Are you trying to win now or are you planning for the future? Because I understood the argument that, this front office believes that maybe this is their final year and they have to do something now in order to, show improvement this season to stay around into the future. But to pick Matt Corral now, surrender future draft capital, I don't know how that helps them now or in the present or in the future rather. Matt Corral, he's a good player. I didn't have a first round grade on any of these quarterbacks. I don't see all pro potential in any of them. My question is, what if Sam Howell had just been sitting there at 137 overall? Like, was it worth it to move up and get Matt Corral at that point in time? Is there that much of a difference between the two prospects? I don't really know. Obviously they had more of a conviction one way, but it's probably not a move I would have made at the end of the day.
Yeah, look, this is not a Matt Corral take. So, don't get me wrong. If Matt Corral is great, I'm going to get it shoved in my face over and over and over again. And I'm fine with that. But this is not a Matt Corral take. It is exactly what Josh just said. What are you doing? Like, what is the vision of the franchise? David Tepper just said this is a 5-6 year rebuild on the heels of drafting Ike Ekwonu, or maybe before the draft or whatever it was. And then you immediately give up next year's third round pick And Panthers fans are like, oh, third round pick. Who cares? I guess third round pick. Third round picks are really valuable. Really valuable. The Panthers have spent months complaining they didn't have one.
And history has shown that if you spend your third round pick on a quarterback, you're basically throwing it away. Since 1990,
I was about to look this up, but you already got it. Go, Breech, go.
Only 3 third round pick quarterbacks have led their team to a Super Bowl, and 2 of them came from the same draft. Can you guys?
Russell Wilson and Nick Foles.
Russell Wilson, Nick Foles are 2.
Nice, Brinson.
Is there a third one, or is it just 2?
Anybody want? There's the third one.
Do you count? You don't count Brock Osweiler second round, right?
Yeah. This is since 1990.
Since 1990. Do.
Man.
All right, I'll give you the answer. Neil
O'Donnell.
Oh, Neil O'Donnell.
That's it. That's the list. So everybody else who has drafted their a quarterback in third has come nowhere close to getting to a Super Bowl. So, Brinson, that is to your point that they're throwing away the pick. Not only did they throw away this year's pick, but they threw away the pick they traded. So you're throwing away 2 picks.
And it's worth noting that, like, yes, Joe Montana was a third rounder and Dan Fouts was a third rounder, but we're talking about modern draft era where, like these guys don't. And Russell Wilson is the rarity because he only fell because he was short. And Nick Foles won a Super Bowl because Carson Wentz got hurt. And then subsequently Carson Wentz had his braid broken because he had to walk by a Nick Foles statue every day. Yada, yada, yada. I don't want to get into the whole thing. I do think that, like, in all seriousness, I'm just curious. I want to look up the last 5 years of approximate value, or 5 or 6 years of approximate value for third rounders. Like, here are some third round picks that have been drafted since 2015. And I'm sorting by Pro Football References approximate value. Alvin Kamara, Tyler Lockett, Joe Thuney, Kevin Byard, Daniil Hunter, Cooper Kupp, Justin Simmons, David Johnson, Orlando Brown, Yannick Ngakoue, Fred Warner, Jordan Hicks, Kareem Hunt, Javon Hargrave, AJ Cann, Chris Godwin, Tevin Coleman is somehow on this list, Malik Collins, Mark Andrews. You get the point. Like,
good players.
The hit rate on a third round pick that's not a quarterback is substantially higher than it is on the quarterback. If you give up a top 75 pick to move up 40 spots late in the third round, it's probably going to be a bad decision. If Matt Corral is an all-pro for 10 years in a row, shove it in my face over and over again. I'll do Charlotte radio every day for a month. I don't care. It's unlikely to happen. Anyway, next loser, Josh. I hate the stupid Panthers. We hijacked the podcast leading up to the draft, and then I hijack it after the draft.
Well, I hate to continue passing the buck, but I did not love what the Bills did on day 2. I didn't think of James Cook to be good value where they took him, and I didn't think Terrell Bernard was, going to go where they took him either. I had him, I think he was at like 120 or something in my final ranking, so it wasn't as far off as probably what the consensus would have thought, but I thought it was a little bit early to take both of them when they did.
Traps, defend your man.
I was going to say, do I need to rebuttal here?
Yeah,
no, I didn't love either selection, but the Bills did trade back twice. I think they got like 5th or 6th rounders, so kind of, insignificant selections, and they really don't have a lot of roster spots. So I'll be interested to see if they like use some of those, package them up on Saturday to trade into the 4th round a couple times to, maximize the chances of those players being good. I think James Cook brings explosiveness to the offense from the running back position. That's really what they've been missing, even when they've gotten good play out of Devin Singletary and Zach Moss. I had Terrell Bernard like in my 6th or 7th round. Like, I think they kind of view him or see him as a Matt Milano type because he's small. He's 6 foot, 220 pounds, pretty good blitzer, but he does not have the coverage ability of Matt Milano. And I think that's part of the reason why Matt Milano has become such a good linebacker, is that he's an outstanding coverage defender. So maybe they hope that they can kind of mold him like they did with Milano. There's kind of uncertainty about Tremaine Edmonds' future at middle linebacker, but with Bernard, they didn't get that type of player. They got someone that could actually ultimately replace Milano, and I think he's way more valuable. So I didn't like the Bernard pick. I agree with Josh. I think the James Cook pick I liked a little bit more because they didn't necessarily need a feature back. They want Josh Allen to have the football in his hands. They don't want to hand it off a ton. That's not what they do. But I liked it a little more because they traded back twice and technically got some more draft capital before making that James Cook pick in the second round.
I think the one thing with a Cook pick is, and I know we're doing winners and losers from day 2. And so you hate to be like, well, what about day 1? But like the Bills were the team that was targeted repeatedly as taking Breece Hall in the first round, and they get Kyrie Elam, and then they're able to get the running back in the second round. So I'm not like, I agree with Josh in the sense of this, like if we're, I'm trying to provide context that we said we wouldn't provide. I mean, yes. You know what I'm saying? Like,
who needs context?
Right. Who wants context? We need winners and losers.
Don't do context here, Brinson.
All right. Who wants, you want to take Malik Willis for a loser traps?
Yeah, I mean, he was definitely a loser. We were talking about it. Was it the biggest draft slide in NFL history? I think it was. Maybe not the most visible because the broadcast, I think, was nice to not show him in the green room for like 15 hours sitting there. I don't know what he was doing the whole time.
It's really more like 32 hours, but yeah.
Yeah, true. I mean, hopefully he slept not in the green room last night. Yeah, he was a gigantic loser. And I think landing in Tennessee is kind of like not the best scenario. I mean, to learn from Ryan Tannehill, that will be good for him. And to maybe not be forced right into the action, that will be beneficial to his development. But this is like a good coach in Mike Vrabel. I think one of the best coaches in the NFL, actually, but old school running style. You just traded away A.J. Brown. You have Robert Woods, Treylon Burks. If Treylon Burks becomes a good player, maybe by 2023, you have kind of your A.J. Brown and your young, exciting quarterback. But yeah, to fall from me putting him in mock drafts at number 2 overall, just a couple weeks ago, and most everyone having him somewhere in the first round, to fall all the way to the back portion of the third, and they have a lot of other quarterbacks go in front of him. Desmond Ridder, it was a colossal fall, and I want to know what you guys think. Was it the biggest draft slide that we've ever seen in the modern NFL draft? What do you guys think?
Yeah,
I mean, I was going to ask Breech next. Nice work.
Well, we were talking about a little bit in Slack as far as quarterbacks go. There is nothing even close to this. It's unprecedented. We've seen, obviously, Aaron Rodgers fall. He was possibly projected to go number 1 overall in 2005, fell to 24. That's still falling within the first round, not falling 2 rounds. Even Dan Marino, 1983, some people thought he might go top 5, maybe with the top pick, and he fell to 27. Again, that's a substantial fall, but you're not falling out of the first round. So as far as quarterbacks go, I cannot.
Or the second round.
Or the second round. And I know we talked about Matt Barkley a little bit, and that was an interesting case because if he had come out in 2012, maybe he's a first round pick, but he decided to go back to school, ended up coming out in the draft in 2013 and fell to the 4th round. And I remember when Barkley fell, that was a huge deal. People were shocked that he was still on the board after the second round. And then after, I think the 3rd round he was first pick in the 4th round or something. It was really, really surprising. But, he wasn't Malik Willis where he was supposed to be a top 10 pick. And then one other thing I will say is that drafts, I said it on our pre-draft show, is that I'm going to disagree with you on the landing spot. I actually think it's a great fit for Willis because
I agree.
Being the quarterback in Tennessee, it's ideal because there's a lot less pressure on you because the offense revolves around Derrick Henry. So you can kind of take baby steps as you learn what you're doing and how to run the offense. And so if you have to sit behind Ryan Tannehill for a year, and then after that, the Titans can get out of his contract, let Willis start, or maybe he beats Tannehill out this year and wins the spot. But you don't have to, this isn't a Peyton Manning offense or Tom Brady offense where you got to make all these reads and you're going to make it successful. You have Derrick Henry there. And so that helps you out a lot. So I actually think as far as teams where Willis could have had the most success, I feel like the Titans would have been really high on this list. So I think he could be good in Tennessee.
I would say that, I agree. I think Tennessee's a good spot for him. If he beats out Ryan Tannehill in training camp this year on Mike Vrabel's team, then a lot of people have made a lot of mistakes. Like, if he's good enough to beat out Ryan Tannehill and get this week 1 starting job, mistakes have been made if he failed at 86. Would you guys rather? So you got to factor in the financial component here and also the public embarrassment component. Would you rather fall like Malik Willis did or fall like Brady Quinn / Aaron Rodgers did? Because you make a lot of money, but you are humiliated publicly and people talk about it for the rest of your life. Or you just quietly slide to 86 to the Titans in the 3rd round. I mean,
I think the latter.
You want the don't embarrass me publicly, don't give me too much. Because I'm taking the money and humiliate me publicly. But like I humiliate myself publicly literally every day on this stupid podcast. So
yeah, I would take the latter because it like if I wasn't actually doing the grades for CBSSports.com, like if I was just flipping through, I'm a big NFL fan. You wouldn't even know that Malik Willis didn't get picked. Like, oh yeah, he got picked somewhere. Like they did not show him. They didn't mention it unless I missed it. I didn't have the volume on the whole time. I didn't see any of those Ian Rappaport kind of jump-ins where he was explaining why Nakobe Dean was falling or Desmond Ridder. It was like they didn't want to mention it. So Malik Willis, we obviously know that he landed where he did, but no humiliation for him. I would go that route.
Josh, do you want the
rich? I'm taking the money. I'm taking the money. Yeah.
I'm just sitting there like, mock me.
Yeah.
Mock me. Okay.
I will say
at the time as I'm falling, I'm not like, ha ha ha, mock me. I'm like, oh God, this is hell. But then when you like Brady Quinn's first contract is gonna be, I don't remember what Brady made, but I mean, it's probably gonna be like triple or quadruple, whatever at least whatever Malik Willis gets over the course of his contract.
Yeah, that was before the rookie wage scale too.
Correct.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, so I'm thinking like old CBA.
Different.
You know, I mean, they got a camera in your face for like 2.5 hours.
Bring it.
You're sweating. Your agent keeps checking his phone. He's like, you see your agent like restarting his phone. Like, I just think we get bad service here. I don't know what's happening. Versus, have we canceled? Green room humiliation at this point?
That did appear. Well, I think one of the rules this year was that they didn't want to show the players on the phone. And so you got a lot less looks in the green room because if they're on their phone and someone's on the clock, then you're automatically going to think that person's being picked by a team. And obviously with gambling and they're trying to tip picks less, I think that was just a byproduct of the rules that were changed as far as what they're going to show on the broadcast.
That works. All right. Any more? We had a couple more losers. Josh, you got one? Loser.
No, my loser was the Bills. Honestly, the reason that I keep looking over is
I threw one more in chat. Do we have another?
Yeah, I have
Trapasso.
two quick ones. Jaguars, I did not understand, and that can be incorporating day one. I know we're not really doing that, but they traded up to get Devin Lloyd last night after picking Trevon Walker at 1. And then
I think that counts because they gave up their second round.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is me firing back at Josh. They drafted Luke Fortner from Kentucky, who I like. I thought it was a little early for him. And then they drafted Chad Muma, another middle linebacker, when they just signed Foy Olukun or whatever his last name is from the Falcons, like a big ticket free agent. So they spent not only a lot of money on a linebacker, they traded up into the first round for a middle linebacker, and then in the third round picked another linebacker. It does not make any sense what they did. And the 49ers to pick Ty Davis Price, a running back out of LSU that was a fringe 7th rounder maybe. He's pretty big. He's not elusive whatsoever, not fast. And you're Kyle Shanahan. Why are you picking running backs early? He did it last year when he picked Trey Sermon and then Elijah Mitchell.
We don't talk about Trey Sermon on this podcast, Traps. Okay, we don't say.
I did not know that.
It really felt like Kyle Shanahan
on this podcast.
He panic picked based on we might lose Deebo Samuel. I'm going to get a running back and a wide receiver, and I'm reaching for both. They probably both would have been available.
Yeah, that's what it felt like.
Now. And
I didn't like what they did.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Jaguars, I would say, man, you
trade up for a linebacker and then you draft another linebacker.
If you told me that I had 4 picks in the top 70 picks of this draft, I'm like, I'm going to show you something magical when you bring up my draft picks. And you're like, I like Trayvon Walker a lot. He made me a bunch of money. think he's going to be a pretty good pass rusher. I like Devin Lloyd a lot, but he's still a linebacker. And then it's not. We'll see if it pans out, but it doesn't feel like this is the magical class that's going to launch the Jaguars into playoff contention. If Trevor Lawrence is Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson, is like even a modicum better than Urban Meyer, they're probably going to be fine off offense. I don't know. It just doesn't. It's not an inspiring draft class. If I'm a Jaguars fan, I would say that.
I did like the value of those linebackers, though. I thought they got really good value where they
Lloyd
took
is a
them.
stud.
He is, and Chad Moom is a good player too. So I don't have an issue with where they were taken. It's just a positional value argument, and I can understand where they currently are in their rebuild. You could argue that other positions would be more important, but at the end of the day, if those two players end up being successful, it's hard to make an argument against it because it's the bad picks that get you fired. So if you get a couple of good picks out of this, it's kind of tough to push back on.
Who do we think the Jags were trading up for? When they moved up for Devin Lloyd last night, it was I thought it was a wide receiver, maybe Pickens, maybe.
It was.
And people were mad they didn't take Pickens.
They traded up 27 with the Bucks. I don't remember who we thought. I didn't really know.
People thought they were going to get a wide receiver because we didn't. Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with Devin Lloyd there. I just think it's not a great draft, and I don't know. It's not a very inspiring group of players that they came away with. As far as San Francisco goes, again, like with the Browns, yeah, I know wide receiver and a running back. You still got Deebo, you still got Ayuk, you have Trey Sermon, you have Elijah Mitchell. Yeah, it's not the best use of maybe the picks. Breech, any thoughts on either of those?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was saying. I think that Kyle Shanahan, maybe not Shanahan, and obviously John Lynch is involved here, but it just seemed like there was a little bit of panic of, well, should we plan like Deebo Samuel's on our team, or should we plan if he's not on our team, or should we just kind of plan for both? We're like the Schrodinger's cat, where the cat's dead, but it's not dead. So Deebo's on your team, but he's not on your team, so you don't know what to do. And so you end up getting a running back that you overdraft and a wide receiver you overdraft. And Danny Gray might end up being good. I think I had him mocked to the Bengals in the 4th round. What?
I love Danny Gray.
I'm just going to see how long you keep talking about dead cats. That's all.
Well, so and so it just seems like they outthought themselves. And so maybe they go to Deebo and they're like, look, we drafted a running back. You don't have to run the ball next season. You can be a wide receiver. That's what you want. And he's like, no, you still need to trade me. And then they're back at square one and they didn't solve anything. And they made 2 not great picks.
All right, very quickly. Actually, you know what? We're going to take a break. And when we come back, we'll talk about the mystery package that the Jets offered the 49ers for Deebo Samuel. Next. So I think the Jets offer was like 10 and a 4th round pick for Deebo. And the 49ers said no. Am I wrong there? Did I read that?
I didn't see that.
I want to say it was number 10, a 5th for Deebo and a 2nd.
Whoa. Maybe that's why it didn't happen.
Yeah. I mean,
it didn't look like a very good deal, honestly.
Thrown in. Yeah, no way.
If you got to send a 2nd back, and the 49ers are like, well, we don't actually have a 2nd. So as you can see, or the 49ers take the London. Oh, they took London. They wanted 10 and a 5th for Deebo and 61. Like I'm not doing that.
No way. No.
Because 10 is good, but
Breech? Do you think if you're the 49, I mean, look at what Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill got traded for. This is the 10th overall pick. Neither of those teams got the Packers didn't get a 10th overall pick. The Dolphins didn't get, or the Chiefs didn't get a 10th overall pick from the Dolphins. So I mean,
plug in instead of the 10th overall pick, plug in Garrett Wilson.
Well, no, yeah. I'm saying that what I'm saying here is that when you look at it from like the point system, that it's not dramatically different from the Tyreek Hill trade or the Devontae Adams trade. And so if the 49ers think they're going to get a bigger trade offer than this, that they might be fantasizing, because is somebody going to offer them 2 first-round picks? Because I don't see many teams offering them a top 10 pick for Deebo Samuel.
Deebo Samuel quietly 26 years old, too. Like he's not 22 or 21. I mean, Deebo does a lot of things in Kyle Shanahan's offense that make a big time difference for the 49ers. So I get it. And I think they want to keep him, and I think they'll figure out a way. But I don't know. Just the offer, I think it was Matt Barrows, the Athletic, pointed out. It was like, I don't know if I would do that. Jets.
Not with the second rounder thrown in there.
Yeah.
That you have to give back the second rounder. I wouldn't do that.
Yeah, I don't think I'd do that either. Kyle Shanahan said
second round. It's the bottom of the second round. It's almost a third round pick.
I mean, we have the players that would have been involved at this point, right? It's basically Deebo Samuel and Drake Jackson for Garrett Wilson and.
Well, I mean, you can't look at it like that because if the 49ers are 10th overall, they're, who's to say they're going to draft Garrett Wilson?
Sure.
They could have taken anybody, anybody was on the table.
Yeah, but like you kind of knew the context of it when you're making the deal.
Well, right. But I'm not saying if you're the 49ers aren't necessarily going to take Garrett Wilson there, and the Jets aren't going to take Drake Jackson at 61.
Okay, let's just in theory, let's take the three deals. The two deals that happened for wide receivers on day one and the hypothetical Deebo deal, right? So the AJ Brown deal, the Marquise Brown deal, and the Deebo Samuel deal. And let's process it with, you know what I'm saying? Like, first of all, the Hollywood Brown deal was the worst by far.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
But I think if you're if you're the 49ers, you trade Deebo for that package. And then you see AJ Brown go like I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean AJ Brown got traded for a first round pick, and Deebo's gonna be traded for a higher first round pick.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess technically there's more out of the second round of going back is a lot though, man. I guess what I'm saying is I wouldn't give up Deebo for that because what Deebo brings to that offense is very unique. And he's on a rookie contract and has to report and has to keep playing. And if he doesn't, you franchise tag him and keep moving on. Anywho, winners. You got a winner, Breech?
Do I have winners? Oh my gosh, I don't think I included.
You want me to name a winner while I'm here?
You know what? I'll just name one. I'll go with the Broncos. Just a random team that came to my head right this second. Number one, I like the fact. I like the fact they got a tight end. Look, you want to build around Russell Wilson. And so look, they just re-signed Melvin Gordon. They have a bunch of offensive weapons, Cortland Sutton, Javonte Williams, and that big gaping hole on the offense where you need a skill player was that tight end because they just sent Noah Fant to Seattle. And you had to think that, hey, this is a hole they need to fill probably in the second or third round. And that's what they did. So I like that they did that. And I like that Nick Bonito pick because they're always making their defense better. They've got Randy Gregory already there, Bradley Chubb, and now you throw in Bonito, and it just feels like their defense got better. So I feel like the Broncos are a team that absolutely got better, even though they didn't have any first-round picks. So
I got nothing on Denver. You guys got anything on Dulich or as someone called him Casa Bonito?
Casa Bonito.
I was a little lower on Greg Dulcich, but it sounds like I was kind of on an island in that belief. He's a good vertical threat. He's got good ball skills. I don't think he's that good after the catch. He didn't really run amazing routes, I didn't think. Hit a couple long plays at UCLA that kind of boosted up his stats. But everything Breech said, like they did have a big need at the tight end spot. And Bonito, I think, can be, if he gains a lot of power and strength and weight on his frame, can be that outside speed rusher that I think they need opposite Bradley Chubb.
Yeah, and Traps, real quick, I do agree with your assessment of him. He ended up in the wrong situation. There aren't, he's not a great fit with every team, but I think in this offense, he
with
has
Russell Wilson,
be a good fit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Josh, by the way, have you visited our draft tracker? It's like teams picks and Josh's face.
Oh, nice. I like that.
Oh yeah. It's good. It's a good run for you. Yeah, absolutely. No, it's like if you scroll down, it's just you on the right side doing updates on the live blog.
Yeah, that's the thing. I had to go back and look through the order to see who each of these teams picked because you kind of get lost in it when you're working. I forgot who picked who over the course of the night. That's what I Yeah, I mean that's
What
I
was
should've
that?
been doing
You
too.
handwritten draft tracker?
I printed out. I like had my wife at work. She's a teacher. Print out like all the team logos in a chart so I could write down who they're picking
What happens
while
when you
I'm
got
doing the
trades?
draft. What's that?
What happens to you 19 trades in the first 38 picks? Like,
Oh yeah, I mean, just when the picks come in, just to see who teams have selected. So
I
for
got you, yeah.
this podcast, and just so if you see if the Jaguars pick the linebacker again, it's easier than going to the draft tracker, clicking on Jaguars. So it's like this is where not having the technology and actually having a piece of paper actually is more useful.
I can see that.
For those who
we
care
were
about that.
doing so many
No
like
one
these
cares
live
about
videos. I was like, I can't believe Treylon Burks is still on the board. And it was like, wait, he was picked 7 picks ago. I was like, God. Josh, you got a winner for us?
I do. It's a team that I had picked on day one as well, the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, it's a team that just makes sound picks year after year.
Can't go wrong with it, honestly. I mean, like
You
they're
can't.
just good at
I
this.
mean, I love the Notre Dame, the selection of Kyle Hamilton out of Notre Dame. I love the Tyler Linderbaum pick on day one. You come back on day two, you get David Ojabo, who is only available because he suffered a torn Achilles late in the pre-draft process. And then you get Travis Jones, who, some regarded as a potential first-round pick, and you get him 76 overall in the third round. I mean, that's tremendous value at positions of need. They were a team that was rumored to be of interest to Jordan Davis. So the fact that they missed out on Jordan Davis in the first round and you still fill that need in the third round, I mean, they just, whether it's luck or just pure sound decision-making, they always seem to make the best moves on draft day.
It's almost like Howie Roseman struts up. He's like, we got Jordan Davis. Suck it, DaCosta. He's like, man, look, I've been doing this for like 30 years. I'm not going to freak out. And just takes Tyler Jones. And by the way, Tyler Jones was one of 3 names that was in discussion for the Buccaneers at 33 to start round 2, as in
and Perry and Winfrey.
What's that?
And Perry on Winfrey. I could be wrong. Isn't he still available?
What could have been? Was he drafted?
No, he wasn't. I think that's like the one thing that we have to remember about even some. I mean, I guess quarterback's probably not the case here with all these guys sliding, but like every year, like that type of decision, like Perry and Winfrey not going to the Bucs at 33, like those guys, like there's such a wide range around the league, especially when you get into day 2 and day 3, that just because the guy is ultimately picked in the 4th round, like maybe it was like a final last minute decision, like let's go Logan Hall over Perry and Winfrey. And then Logan Hall could have fallen, out of the, first 2 days of the draft. It's just like, I don't think we need to always pigeonhole these guys and say he's really a 4th round pick when there was really teams that liked him, but maybe only had him, as the second best guy on their board as opposed to the top guy.
I always think about TJ Clemmings. I think it was the 2015. Yeah, maybe it was 2015. And it was like, he was a first rounder in every mock draft coming out of Pittsburgh, offensive lineman, potential starting left tackle. And he went in the 5th round. And it comes out, it's like, as it turns out, TJ Clemmings has a debilitating knee injury that's going to keep him from playing football probably permanently. And like, you just don't know. There's stuff like the Nakobe Dean stuff. Everybody's like, oh, he's sliding like crazy. Well, he didn't have shoulder surgery and he's not going to be able to play this year. Ojabo, 45th overall. He tore his Achilles. You don't know how he's going to come back. I mean, it's teams take into account all this stuff differently. Traps, do you have a winner or did you I'm lost at this
point. Winner. There's 2 that I was kind of going back and forth between looking at my little printed out chart here instead of Josh's face on the draft tracker. Cardinals, Trey McBride in the 2nd round. He was like my number 3 tight end, but I understand it. He was the John Mackey Award winner for the college football's best tight end. He was the offense at Colorado State. He ran routes. He was pretty good after the catch. He's not tremendous in any area, but I like adding him to that offense for Kyler Murray, even with Zach Ertz. The more weapons, the better. And then to go back-to-back defensive line edge rusher with Cam Thomas, who is not J.J. Watt, but he kind of reminds me of J.J. Watt in that he loves that swim move, can play inside, outside. He was like playing nose tackle at San Diego State. It's not going to happen in the NFL. And then Majay Sanders, someone that I was really high on in that he was like 240 pounds at 6'5", but he plays like he's 280. He's really powerful. The pass rush plans are definitely there. And then after losing Chandler Jones, I didn't hate them actually doubling up on that position because that's kind of been a weakness for these, pretty good Cardinals teams over the past couple of years with Kyler Murray is that when it's not Chandler Jones, they really haven't had a secondary player. So they're kind of rolling the dice twice and saying, let's hope at least one of these players becomes good to help replace the production that we lost with losing Chandler Jones.
The NFC West is like, man, significantly not as scary as it was a year and a half ago.
Yep.
I mean, it feels like the Rams division to run unless Trey Lance takes that massive leap. And the Cardinals could be good, but this whole Kyler Murray thing has to freak everybody out. It's just wild how these things shift so quickly.
The AFC West is the new NFC West.
Good call.
Put that on a t-shirt. That's what I'm
You should put it on a bumper sticker.
I'm going to put that on a bumper sticker.
People drive around Nashville, they're like, there's Breech. It's the only guy with the. Can you imagine if you had that? That would a weird bumper sticker to put on a car. Trying to think of my. Oh, I know. I had a winner. Aaron Rodgers goes on Pat McAfee's show while the Packers are making their second first-round pick, and everybody's like, "There's no way these guys aren't drafting a wide receiver." They don't draft one. Rodgers was like, we had 6 guys, first-round grades. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, no big deal, and playing it the way he should. Granted, he said he wasn't sure Devontae Adams was coming back, but they go and get Christian Watson out of North Dakota State, who I think is a pretty good player. And if we believe the same sort of, Steelers draft a wide receiver in the middle rounds, Packers draft a wide receiver in the second round. I know Ted Thompson's gone, RIP, but man, I mean, how many second round picks in a row have worked out for the Packers at wide receiver? And all these guys who are drafting for the Packers worked under Ted Thompson and know what they're looking for. So I think Rodgers is a winner because after the 2 straight no first rounders, they actually took someone and traded up for him, and everybody can kind of shut up about that, and we'll see if they make a deal in the offseason. Agree or disagree?
I mean, agree. You look at the list of second round wide receivers they have signed since Aaron Rodgers was drafted in 2005. It is Greg Jennings in 2006, Jordy Nelson in 2008, Randall Cobb in 2011, and Devontae Adams in 2014. I mean, that's basically 4 for 4 with a double
4 home runs.
Or 2. Yeah, all home runs. I mean, we're talking about fantastic picks. And like you said, Brinson, it seems like they know what they're looking for at that spot. And I think there were probably some people that were maybe surprised to see Christian Watson go that high. But if there is one front office who I love to second guess, but I am not going to second guess in this instance because they've done so well with second round receivers, it's the Packers. So I think Aaron Rodgers is a winner. I agree with you.
Yeah, I would be generally inclined to push back a little bit on Christian Watson just because I didn't think of him as
push back. I'll push back.
Well, I have no problem pushing back on you. It's the history of Green Bay picking a wide receiver in the second round.
Right. That's probably more like the correlation causation there is probably not truly accurate for sure.
Watson is a guy that obviously impressed during the pre-draft process, excelled at the Senior Bowl, tested fantastic at the NFL Combine, had a little bit of an issue with being physical through his routes and attacking the ball down the field. But you're taking a chance on what he could become, his size, his speed, his length. I mean, you're looking for a Marquez Valdez-Scantling type player for this offense. So it could pay off immensely. I mean, it certainly helps when you have a guy like Aaron Rodgers distributing the football. I just didn't value him where they took him.
And we have to factor in that they traded up to get him. And in this offense, I mean, obviously they're not going to ask Christian Watson to be Devontae Adams immediately, but in watching, but what I'm saying is that Devontae Adams is crazy route runner. That's how he was so productive and became arguably the best receiver in football. Christian Watson, that's not his game. They were giving him end arounds and jet sweeps and letting him just run past all these FCS corners that are insurance salesmen at this point, where it's what are they what's the plan with him? And to get MVS, if they get someone like that, okay, great. But you traded into the, way up in the second round when guys like Sky Moore and George Pickens and Tyquan Thornton, who ran 4.28, that's a better route runner and has better hands, I thought, was picked later by the Patriots. John Mechie, Josh's guy, Wendell Robinson, who would have been a fun kind of gadget type, Randall Cobb type, got picked later. I felt like they almost kind of panicked and said, we need to appease Aaron Rodgers. We don't want him to lose his mind. We don't know what he could do if we wait and a lot of these guys go off the board. To even if you like the player, you have to factor in the trade up, and that's why I did not really like it, because I knew how many quality wide receivers were still available in the second round.
Yeah, I mean, same vein, you could say Chiefs win again. Like, oh, look at Kansas City.
Sky Moore, man. Yeah.
Sky Moore. I'm sure, like, you're going to see Sky Moore catching like 10 touchdowns. Although, I mean, Mecole Hardman had worked out, but Sky. I mean, based on draft Twitter, Sky Moore is catching 10 touchdowns. Sky Moore is going to be overdrafted in fantasy and best ball next year. I'll tell you that much.
And that was the weird thing, because they could have taken more. They could have taken George Pickens, Mechie. They had all these guys there, and
like two of those guys are coming off ACL tears.
That's true, but it's not like this isn't 1971 when an ACL tear ended your career.
All right, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the Packers are losers, but Aaron Rodgers is a winner. I mean,
Well, Aaron Rodgers is definitely a winner. I mean, we don't have to hate on Christian Watson.
I'm not saying.
Is it the Carson Wentz fallout because he went to the same school as Carson Wentz?
Oh, it could be. No, I'm not saying that. Like, I'm not saying that ACL tear is a problem. I mean, but it does feel like the Packers have been. I guess it's a question of, are the Packers working their second round wide receiver magic again, or the Packers, did they get caught on the bad end of a wide receiver run and force their way in to grab somebody before the secondary run happened, aka what happened to them 3 years ago with, like, they ended up taking AJ Dillon in the second round because there were no wide receivers left. I mean, yeah, that's maybe they're losers for panicking.
Panic.
I
think they did.
Okay. Let's get to this is a lively group here at 12:45 a.m. on
this is day 2. What are we going to look like on day 3? Our energy level has gone.
Day three is the worst.
We're going to look like Les Snead and Sean McVay.
So, I mean, you got Traps and Josh. I don't know if Breech, did you ever do one? Did you guys ever do a draft in Radio City?
No.
Nope.
Oh, day 3 in Radio City is like,
it's got to be rough.
It's like zombie land. Everyone's walking around and they're like, and there's like a guy like hyping up the crowd, and you're like, kill me. I don't want to be here. This is hell.
And the thing is, the crowd is like, because I went to day 3 in Chicago and day 3 in Nashville. So, and like, you saw the crowds in Nashville on day 1. Everyone's drunk and cheering and having fun, and there's 600,000 people. By day 3, people are passed out on the sidewalk. Nobody wants to stand and watch the picks anymore. There's no more famous people around announcing picks. It's all done via, satellite on TV, and everybody's just giving up. And so, yeah, that's what it feels like.
Day three at Radio City. I did it twice. I did it 2011, 2012. It makes us feel like we are right now like a giant fireball shooting through space in terms of energy. It's like 300 journalists and no one's saying a word. It's just like click, clack, and somebody's like, the Eagles have traded 256, 259 to the 49ers for 247. And they're like, but the 247th pick, the 49ers select prospect name you've never heard of. And you're just like, oh my God. And you're running a live blog. You're like, can we please, God, get out of here? I mean, it's a rough scene, man. Anyway.
With that being said, make sure you tune into our live blog tomorrow on our post-draft show.
I'm just telling you, like the energy of, like, I loved Radio City and it was amazing, but like the first round of Radio City is, you feel like your hair's on fire. It's like I was there for 2011 first round. Cam Newton won. All these quarterbacks are going. That was the only time I was there for the first round.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And then it's like day 2 is like kind of fun, and then day 3 is just like it's a zombie land apocalypse situation with media members running around just like pouring coffee into their faces. Anywho, top prospects available. Oh man, I am not a Carolina fan, and even I can't handle any more Sam Howell draft party shots from ESPN. Please stop it. Have you seen these videos? Oh, it is.
I was watching
rough,
NFL Network. I didn't see it.
It is rough out there in those streets. There was one where like a screenshot of Sam Howell has stood up and left his couch, and there's like 30 people in the Charlotte house. No one, there's not a single person making eye contact with anyone else. And his girlfriend's like looking back, wondering like, should I go talk to Sam? And then like the final, like they cut in and Sam just grabs his drink, just like and starts draining his drink, and then looks at me and goes, "Oh, is that on TV?" She was like, "Yeah, I think that's on TV."
That is kind of one thing I miss from the COVID year that we had is when there were those awkward moments where the kid would get up and he'd hug his girlfriend first instead of his mom, or vice versa, and there'd be this awkward moment. That's the kind of stuff that we miss a little bit.
Yeah.
But
and Nike making picture of Belichick.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, Josh, who are the top prospects you're looking to come off the board early in round 4 as we zombie land our way to the end of this draft?
Yeah, I'll give you one on each side of the ball. Boise State wide receiver Khalil Shakir, just a really smart, savvy route runner, a guy that can be used at and around the line of scrimmage. And then Sam Houston State cornerback Zion McCollum is, 6'2", long cornerback, great speed. Former wide receiver that I think has a lot of upside in the NFL and has all the traits that you look for in a cornerback.
Traps over under 5.5 television jokes about Chris Paul made in the. Look, they drafted the Phoenix Suns point guard again.
Over.
Who are your top prospects here?
I like Isaiah Spiller quite a bit, and it feels like pre the Texas A&M Pro Day that I think I mentioned at some point during one of these videos that we've done that they were all really slow at that Texas A&M Pro Day. Isaiah Spiller was kind of that one of the big three with Breece Hall and Ken Walker from Michigan State. They go on day 2. He's still available. I think he has like 3 down ability. He's a good receiver too. Multiple years in the SEC, big production from Isaiah Spiller. So if there's a team still out there that feels like they need a feature back, I think Isaiah Spiller can be that guy. And then I think Chris Paul's good. Rasheed Walker from Penn State was
I thought we had Chris Paul and Rasheed Wallace for a second. I was about to lose my mind.
No, Rasheed Walker.
Kobe Bryant.
We do have Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant's still available.
Oh my God,
we're Chris Paul and Kobe Bryant in this class.
There's nothing more depressing than seeing like Matt Forte announcing a draft pick, like he's an NFL legend. Like, oh my God, we are dirty.
Yeah, that was nuts. I could talk about Rasheed Walker. He was a big recruit at Penn State. His film is a little messy, but I think he did a good job against David Ojabo and Aiden Hutchinson. The athleticism is there. He can recover when he's beaten. That's a huge trait to have as an offensive lineman because you are going to get beat in the NFL. He's someone developmental type that you don't want to start him right away. But Rasheed Walker, like a few years ago, was one of the most sought after high school recruits in the country. So there's still a lot of really good players left. And Josh has done a great job keeping that list updated for our best available going into Zombieland on Saturday.
Before we get to breaches, Matt Ariza breakdown. Scroll down just a touch, Deebo. I'm gonna call my shot here. Thanks to
Zach Tom's a good one too.
Who's Perrion Winfrey, who I said might be the top pick of the second round. Oops, it wasn't. I'm gonna say the Bucs are the first pick in the 4th round. I say they take Perrion Winfrey with the top pick in the 4th round. So if you see those odds pop up, grab that. I don't know how many bets we'll get in for the 4th through 7th rounds. The books are probably going to keep it pretty tight after getting hammered the last 2 days.
Math.
Yeah. Breech over under Matt Ariza. During
our pre-draft show was at 128.5, and at that time I said take the over. Before the draft started on Thursday, it was at 114.5, and I said take the over. So the over's still looking good. I still like it. I won't go into my whole holder rant again, but I do think that is one of the reasons why he's dropping that low, because teams don't know if he can hold.
Well, I think you should provide a little specifics, because somebody was like, why isn't this guy already gone in a group chat I was in? I was like, it's because he can't hold. They're like
so Ariza.
They're like, hold what? And I was like, actually, I don't know. Hold on. Let me ask Breech.
He was
the place kicking and punting. What is he holding?
Right. He was the place kicker and the punter at San Diego State. And so usually in the NFL, if you are a punter, you are also the holder for field goals. And so maybe some people thought that Ariza would be a kicker and a punter in the NFL like he was at San Diego State. That will not happen. You do not do that in the NFL because there's no way you were going to be the best kicker and the best punter on your team. Like, it's just not. And also
a little erratic. Like, he's got a big leg, but
right, and it throws your mechanics out of whack. There's just too many things that would go wrong, and it's been tried before, 80s, I think 70s, but it never works. And so Ariza is the best prospect as a punter, not close to the best prospect as a kicker. And so if he is a punter, he is going to have to hold on field goals, and I don't think anyone knows if he can do that because he's never had to do it in a game.
Follow-up question.
Yes.
Is that not something you can figure out how to do kind of quickly?
No, well, you can, but there's like a pressure to it. And on the pre-draft podcast, I brought up Corey Bjorquez, who tanked 2 kickers one season with the Bills. The kicker went Tyler Bass, I think, was both seasons. His worst season came with Bjorquez as his holder in 2020. And then Mason Crosby, who did not miss a single field goal in 2020.
It was a disaster in 2021.
Disaster in 2021 with Bjorquez as his holder. And so if you have a holder, you're just a little off.
Like, I mean, it is a very, like, you're catching a high-speed football low and spinning it and putting it on, like, the nose so someone can kick it with their foot. Like, that's a great answer.
And the kicker has to trust you, because if they're not sure that little thing that little twinge could throw the kicker's confidence off. And if they start worrying that you're not going to have the ball down or right where they like it, then that becomes a whole thing. And you don't want to mess with the kicker's psychology, because then you throw everything out the window and they start missing every kick. So
speaking of psychology, I kind of want to keep this conversation going for like 10 more minutes just to see if Traps or Josh just like
which one of us falls asleep.
No, I actually have something on
this. The great Molly P does have a question. She says, why does the punter have to hold?
All right, and that is a very good question.
I assume it's roster related. For
back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, a lot of times you had a backup quarterback would hold the ball, and that was so that there was always
it happened in the 90s and 2000s too. Buddy.
Well, it was a lot more rare. It became a lot more rare. And
your dad hitched a ride from a Waffle House waitress to the AFC Championship game, and like that doesn't happen anymore.
Well, I'm sure we all remember the Cowboys lost to the Seahawks in the playoffs because Tony Romo fumbled snap. And because he was the holder. And so the reason that kind of got phased out is because at football practice, so kickers and punters and long snappers are all doing their own thing during practice. They're basically separated. And so, sometimes you'll hear about them just going off and golfing on like a walkthrough day because they have nothing to do. And so since they're spending all that time together, it just made sense for the punter to become the holder, because you want to be able to practice with your holder all the time. And if the holder's the backup quarterback, you're only getting like 10 minutes of practice with them a week. And that's, you don't feel too comfortable with that going into a game. And so since kickers and punters were spending so much time together, it naturally just became that the punter became the holder.
It's also kind of insane, the idea that like your quarterback might get hurt, and then the guy who's throwing passes is all of a sudden putting his hand in front of feet who are kicking like wildly coming in. D from Detroit asked, did Dean get drafted? Yes. Nakobe Dean got drafted to the Philadelphia Eagles, who are smashing this draft. He did get drafted by the Eagles, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Smashing this draft. I'm an Eagles fan suddenly. It's
Did we list them on our winners?
I love it. I remember the halcyon days of our 2017 championship. Like that was the glory days. I was there in the stadium. It was incredible. Like I've never felt that much euphoria being an Eagles fan. Now I feel like it's kind of the rebirth time where we might be going for another championship.
Here's the first thing you got to do is just you got to get it through your brain that Carson Wentz didn't walk by the statue every day, because the statue's at the stadium and they practice across the street.
Yeah, but that's no fun.
Yeah, really,
I don't know. This is going to be like an ongoing application /
Deebo has to shoot down this false narrative every time before it becomes gossip.
I'm really
There's a lot of work to do for Brinson to be on board.
Okay. Well, we'll discuss. I bet the Eagles to win the division, to win the conference, and win the Super Bowl. So I'm an Eagles fan. Now, you may have to bribe me not to pick the Eagles to win the Super Bowl publicly just to avoid a death curse, but we'll get to that down the road. In the meantime, if you haven't already, hit the like button, subscribe to the podcast if you're listening, turn on your alerts because we'll be live after round 4, 5, 6, and 7 of the 2022 NFL draft. And by God, follow Josh Edwards at Edwards CBS and Chris Trapasso at Chris Trapasso on Twitter. Obviously, you can follow Breech too, but like Josh and Traps are grinding here. This is grind season, and they're doing a great job. They're staying up till 1 a.m. talking to this podcast for the 18th hour of the last 24 hours. Appreciate you, boys. For Breech, for Edwards, for Trapasso, I'm Brinson. We'll see you guys later.